Good evening. You're very welcome back to Fate Matters. I'm David Hennessy. My guests again this week are Michael and Anna Marie Groark. They are the parents of Father Michael Joseph Groark, whose interview you enjoyed so much, and so many of you have spoken to me about it. So we'll take up where we left off from last week. Michael and Anna Marie, thank you so much. Welcome back.
Thank you
I'd
for
like
having
to
me.
take up the story where we left off last week by asking you, would you would you just recap briefly, and then I'd like to start sort of go back to when you started noticing something about your son. You did notice, but you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. He just kind of disappeared from us. That Michael had told you that he had fired him. And then
But,
he
but
just
before
kind of,
before that, Anne Marie, if you could go back before Michael fired him, say a year before Michael fired him, or 6 months or 2 years, when did you notice something was happening?
well, he was not living with us at the time. He started missing a lot of work.
And he was unkempt.
Yeah.
And this is a young man who always was very fastidious in his hygiene and all. But he started to live with a young lady, would see us infrequently at best. We could tell that there was something that was just off, something that was not right. And he masked his behaviors very, very well. There would be times that he would be a great salesman, and then 20 minutes later, when he had to maybe throw on a hoodie and get in his car, he would be a great drug dealer. I mean, he could separate these things with amazing precision, which I didn't understand, but nevertheless, that's the way it was. And when we started to see these things, in fact, one time it was very, very evident to Annie, and that's when I had gone to Milwaukee for this job, and I was arranging for our housing and everything else, and she stayed back in Vancouver, Washington, where we had a house, and we're doing the real estate to get the house sold, which was another miraculous thing. But when she knew that we were going to be moving in May, she had one operation, and Michael Joseph was the one who came and cared for her one whole day, and he was just fine. Nevertheless, he could leave there and then just go out and be not a very nice person, if you will.
You didn't really know what was going on.
No, no, we didn't know completely what was going on. And then after Anna Marie had come to Milwaukee, and we got a phone call from our daughter-in-law, the wife of our oldest son, and she told Annie, she says, "Do you want to? What's going on with MJ?" And of course, she says, "Yes, I do." She says, "Well, he's addicted to heroin, and he has been for a long time." And that just threw us into a tailspin. And we got down on our knees and we said a rosary. And when the rosary was finished, we kind of went our separate ways. And I went in and I sat on the bed and I was doing some spiritual reading. And not long after I started, my cell phone started to ring, and the caller ID was from the Vancouver, Washington area. And we had prayed for his deliverance. Well, I pick up the phone and hello, and he says, "Dad, this is MJ. Can you get me out of here?" Which to me was astounding, and I never booked a flight so fast in my life. But we were able to get him on a flight, well, to Milwaukee, but it had to stop in Minneapolis. And so we drove to Minneapolis, and I told him, I said, "When you land in Minneapolis, just get off the plane. We will be there. Just get off the plane." And so, sure enough, the plane lands. We're there. He comes walking through the terminal, and I say, "Well, there he is." And Annie says, "Where?" I said, "Right there in the blue pants." She says, "Where?" I said, "Honey, that's your son." She didn't even recognize him. He looked so haggard and just not himself. And so then we drove to Milwaukee, and we got him into if you will, a drying out tank called Genesis. And there's little stories about all this that are really quite miraculous, but the bottom line is he was there for a week, and within that week he shook heroin. He met a very fine doctor who helped him, but he was only in there for 1 week, and then he came home with us to our apartment at the time. And I sat there and I asked him, I said, so now what do you want to do? Because you can't just live here, scot free. He says, well, first thing, I think I want to go to mass tomorrow, which of course, rocked me to my core because, he was raised in the Lutheran church, and he had heard us, of course, talk about the Catholic Church and Mass and all that. So what we did was we took him to the Basilica of St. Josaphat here in Milwaukee, which is one of the most beautiful basilicas in the world. And it was there that he tells us he heard the calling, if you will, to stop being so selfish and to take care of God's children.
Michael, you said a few minutes ago about several little, what you would call miracles happened. Would you say what were they?
Well, things like he, first of all, he called within less than 30 minutes after we finished the rosary, calling for his deliverance. Secondly, he had driven up to his younger brother's apartment in Vancouver, and Adam wasn't home, so he just went to a gas station across the street, and they let him use the phone. And so I answered that call from that phone. Next thing was that I called his older brother, Kevin, and I told him, I said, go up to Adam's apartment and get MJ, stay with him all night because he's getting on a plane in the morning, and we can't, if you let him out of your sight, he's going to go get some heroin. And so Kevin and his wife stayed up with him all night. They took him to the airport the next morning, and they got him on the plane. So there was just lots of little things that kind of, we could tell that we were being led, if you will, to do these things.
And you had no idea he was on heroin. You knew by this time you knew he was on some kind of drugs, I suppose.
Well, we suspected that, of course, up until the phone call that our daughter-in-law made to Anna Marie to tell him he was on heroin.
And that must have hit you very hard.
It was devastating. Yeah, the only experience I have ever had with heroin was that my brother died on heroin. So that I just associated heroin with death. And the fact of the matter is that usually that is the outcome of it. When we were in Vancouver and MJ, I didn't know where he was. But we knew something was wrong clearly because we didn't know where a kid was and he wasn't responding to us. I was working in a doctor's office, an orthopedic clinic, and every day I called his cell phone. Every day I called his cell phone for at least a year. And every day I said the exact same thing. In the same cheerful voice, I would say, hi, honey, it's Mama. I'm just calling to see if you want to come over for dinner tonight. Give me a call. Let me know what time you can come by. I'm looking forward to seeing you. I love you. Bye-bye. And I did this day after day after day after day after day, acting like I didn't call him the last 30 days or whatever, hoping that one day he would respond. And, the people that I worked with just looked at me with such pity, because they just knew that I was never going to get a response. But I wasn't willing to give up on my kid either.
Right.
And it was quite heartbreaking. One day, though, when Michael was traveling, because he traveled a lot with his job, MJ did call and said he wanted to come over. And I was just beside myself. And I said, well, what do you want for dinner? And he goes, oh, I don't care. Whatever you pick is fine. So I went to one of his favorite restaurants. It was a Mexican restaurant, Baja Fresh. And I ordered almost everything on the menu because I didn't know what he wanted, but I know he liked that restaurant. So when he came, it was just like a literal buffet, a feast. And he came with the woman that he was with at the time. And they very quickly shoved a few bites into their mouth and then they were ready to leave. And he just needed some money. And it was heartbreaking, but not knowing any better, of course, I gave him the money. And knowing what I know now, I shouldn't have done that. But, anytime he needed money, I would give him money. During that time, he did break into our house, which was crazy because he had the key, but he crawled in through the kitchen window. And we had a jar that we were saving money in. And ironically, it was, we were part of the Sarah Club and it was an organization that supports vocations for priests. And we were just throwing our coins in there, and he actually stole that money that was for vocations for the priesthood, right?
Ironically.
The look on your face must be yeah. And one of the more heartbreaking stories of that time for my mama heart, we kind of lived in an upscale neighborhood. And I would say maybe a half a mile from my house was a very nice grocery store. And he told me this after, after he was well. He told me that he had gone into that grocery store when he was out on the streets and stole a sandwich. Why would you steal a sandwich? He goes, I was hungry. And it's like, you were in my neighborhood. My house always has food. You have the key to my house. You know how to break into my house, clearly. Why would you be that close to my house and go in a grocery store and steal food? And he said, Mother, I was an addict. I was high. I was crazy. Those are things
Not thinking straight.
that you do when you're crazy and you're stoned. And that was the one story of all the stories.
That'll break your heart.
Food and shelter and clothing. And I couldn't do that. And granted, he was a full grown man, but that's beside the point when it's your child. Do you know what I'm saying? It was very, very heartbreaking. There's a lot of stories that he has from the time, I call them the dark years, during the dark years. And he says there's things that happened to him during that time that I will never know. And it's probably a really good thing.
Yeah.
He was never arrested, thanks be to God. I don't know how that ever happened, but he was never arrested. When Michael was gone, when he had moved ahead to Milwaukee, and I stayed at home to get the house ready to sell in Milwaukee. And I think the miracle Michael was talking about, it wasn't a miracle, but it was a blessing, I would say. Our house sold in one day.
Yeah, well, that is, I would call it a miracle.
Well, Michael did. I called it a blessing. And so Michael was gone, and I had to have this surgery. So Michael Joseph showed up very early in the morning, like 5 a.m, to get me to the hospital. And he got me safely to the hospital. And then he stayed there. Well, I don't know if he stayed there. He probably didn't stay. But then he was there to bring me home. And I was, after surgery, you're still pretty loopy from all of the anesthetic. And we were leaving the hospital, and I was hungry because, you don't eat from the day before. And I wanted an ice cream. And so he said, well, I'll pull into this gas station and I'll run in and get you an ice cream. And evidently it was in a very bad neighborhood that he chose to pull in. And he said, he parked, he goes, okay, Mama, lock the door and don't open the door for anybody but me. And I said, okay. And I promptly fell asleep. I do not know how long he was gone, but he did indeed come back for an ice cream. Well, evidently he was gone for quite some time, but I slept through it. But during that time, he went and did some drug deals and just left me sleeping in the car. But I was asleep the whole time, and I didn't really realize it. But he did get me home safe. And we stopped at the pharmacy to pick up some pain medications that I needed. And I did have the wherewithal to keep the prescription in my pocket the whole time that he was with me, instead of putting them on my bedside table or on the counter or in the medicine cabinet. I kept them because I knew that he would take them if I left them out. And at this point, we weren't stupid. We knew he had something to do with drugs or something. But I just, in my nativity, I was thinking, marijuana or pills.
Who knows? Yeah.
You know, I wasn't thinking anything like hard drugs like heroin, but evidently he did whatever he could get his hands on, but heroin was his drug of choice. So when we decided that we were moving, it was a really strange thing. Like Michael said, he was going to get half of his salary, less than half of his salary. I was leaving a good paying job. We were leaving all three of our children, one of them, which we didn't know where he was, if he was
Right.
where he was. Our only grandchild, we were leaving Jade, who was the light of our life at that time. She was the only grandchild that we had. All of our friends, our church community, but we had such a sense of peace. Everybody else was wound up about it, but we had such a sense of peace about this move. So we got in the car with our dog and our cat, and we moved to Milwaukee, just feeling very good about it. We had an apartment, and then we weren't here 2 weeks that MJ called and said, "Can you get me out of here?" And we looked at each other and it's like, so that was why we had a sense of peace, was that's why we're here.
That's right.
You know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about changing your people, places, and things. And so this was changing his place. So when we got him here, I couldn't do anything with him until the next day, as far as getting him into a detox. So I've got this kid with me. He looked terrible. His hair was mangy. So we got him home. I drew him a nice warm bath and cut all of this mangy hair off of him and sat up with him all night and scratched his back and rubbed his back. And I gave him like a handful of Tylenol PM, just trying to get him to go to sleep. And he never did go to sleep, but I was able to just keep him calm enough during the night until we got him into the detox center. And like Michael mentioned, he met a lovely doctor that treated him with the drug Suboxone for about a year.
Yeah.
And then,
easily.
Yeah. And then weaned him off. And then one thing Michael said mistakenly, that his brother, when he called for help and asked to come, both of his brothers sat up with him all night. Yes. Adam was there and Kevin was there. And so I really credit his brothers for saving him that night, because had they not sat up and held vigil with him all night, I don't know that MJ would have stayed there.
Right.
And his brothers got him to the airport, made sure he got on that plane. He might have changed his mind and left as soon as the urge started. So I really credit his brothers. So MJ was here, and then fortunately, about a year after MJ was here, our youngest son moved here. So our oldest son is still in Portland raising his beautiful family. He's got 3 daughters. One just got married. The 2 are in high school. His family's doing great. They're thriving. Our youngest son's here in Milwaukee with us. He's got a beautiful wife and 2 children. And then Father MJ is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right now. He's going to be moving to Dubuque. We're doing well here in Milwaukee. I did mention that we gave away an entire library. We retired about 5 years ago.
In 2020.
We gave away everything that we owned, and we bought a motorhome, and we were going to spend the rest of our days traveling the United States.
And living in our RV.
And living in an RV. And we did that for about a year. And unfortunately, my husband became ill. He contracted an autoimmune disease. And so our travels did not last as long as we had hoped, but we had a wonderful year. And we came back to Milwaukee so that we would be close to the Veterans Administration Hospital, because my husband is a proud veteran of the United States Navy from the Vietnam Veterans War. And he gets his medical care here at the VA Center. And we're close to our son, Adam, who helps us out when we need it. He takes care of our dog when we're because Michael has a lot of hospital stays and whatnot. So
I'd like to go back to the moment when you got the phone call from your son, which you weren't expecting, obviously.
Well, we had just
And
finished praying the rosary
yes,
for him,
yeah,
and then
tell
he
me,
called.
that's exactly what I wanted to go to.
Yes,
You
it
had
was.
prayed the rosary because you got the call from your daughter-in-law
Yeah.
saying that he was on heroin,
Mm-hmm.
that Michael,
He
that
was on
MJ was on.
heroin, and he was homeless, and he was, and he called, and it was like there was our life before the call and our life after the call. That call
So
was like a moment
when
in
you
time.
when you got that call, your first reaction was to say the rosary.
Yes, when Tanya called, our daughter-in-law called and said, I just found out what MJ is doing. Do you want to know? And I said, yes. She says he's living in the little car. We bought him a car, and we didn't buy him a good one because we knew that he wouldn't be able to take care of it or wouldn't take care of it. And so she says he's living in his car. He's eating out of dumpsters. He's homeless, and he's addicted to heroin. And of course, when I heard heroin, my heart just sank because, like I said earlier, I equate heroin right away with death. I just assume that if you use heroin, you're going to die. And now, so we hung up and we just said this prayer for MJ. And again, once again, I just said, if God wants to take him, let him take him. And it would be better that he be dead than living under a bridge, eating out of dumpsters, cold and hungry and injured and being harmed. And that would have been easier for me to attend his funeral than to think about him living in those conditions. And when we finished the rosary, we had such a sense of peace, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a weight was lifted off our shoulder because we turned it over to God and to Mother Mary. And we had that sense of peace like we did when we traveled across the country to Milwaukee, of all places. Like, nobody moves to Milwaukee.
Made no sense.
Nobody moves to Milwaukee. People leave Milwaukee, but like nobody decides to move here. Okay.
At least willingly.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, no offense, but I do want to
And we
say,
love Milwaukee.
I do want to say Milwaukee's a lovely place. We do love it. The people are great. It's
Amen.
yeah.
You had to say that very quickly, Anna Marie.
Yes.
But it is true.
We
It is true.
don't want to
Get that
alienate it.
in.
It is
So-
true. It is true.
so-
Unfortunately, we don't drink because it's
It's a drinking state.
they
yes.
got a lot of good breweries in town. It's a nice place. But anyway,
Well, tell me, when he said to you, then after, first of all, how on earth did he turn dry in a week? How did that happen?
so
That's a miracle. That's a miracle.
yeah. So he
Amen.
dried out. He was in this dry out tank, a detox center. It wasn't a rehab center. It was just a detox, and it was free.
It was a drunk tank.
It was a drunk tank, and he met Dr. Sullivan there. And so we got him out of detox because you could only stay there a week. And then we were supposed to take him to Dr. Sullivan's office where he would get the prescription for the medication. And so coming out of the detox center, I am on cloud 9 because my child has been saved. He is no longer a heroin addict. He has kicked the habit. And I am so happy. And I go floating into Dr. Sullivan's office, and he's like, ma'am, have a seat. This is so not over. And he's like, you do not understand. Less than 1% of people kick this habit. This is only the beginning. There can and most likely will be relapses. And he just busted my bubble. I thought, we won. I thought, it's over. And he's trying to tell me, no, ma'am, that is not how this plays out. No, ma'am. And I was so hurt that this man would tell me that. But he was right in telling me that, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
That hardly anybody gets through this unscathed.
It's the hard truth.
But Father MJ did. He never had a relapse. And we invited Dr. Sutherland to Father MJ's ordination. And one of the most beautiful scenes after the ordination, there was a big courtyard, and MJ and Dr. Sullivan were way back in the corner of the courtyard, just the two of them talking head to head. And I thought, how beautiful is that? Because clearly this doctor doesn't see a lot of successful outcomes. And how nice for him to see a successful outcome, and how nice for MJ to still have this relationship with this man that was so instrumental in his recovery.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing.
And tell me, what did you, when he asked to go to Mass, that must have been quite a surprise for you.
We're in the car and we're leaving detox, and his dad says, well, what do you want to do now? And he goes, I want to go to Mass. And we get there, and the Basilica of St. Josaphat, and may your listeners please Google it, St. Josaphat in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is a beautiful basilica. And the story behind it is just amazing. And so that's where we figure if he's going to go to one Mass, he's going to go to a great big old Mass.
The most Catholic Mass we could think
in the basilica. So we go there, and he said, when Father raised the host and the precious blood, he said at that point, it came over him that that's what God wanted of him, to do that. And he didn't understand it at the time, so he wasn't about to say anything to us about it, because he knew we would lose our minds. And so he didn't say anything, but he did say he wanted to become a Catholic like we were, because he saw our joy and our happiness. And so he wanted to learn more about that. So we called a priest that we knew here in Milwaukee, Father Michael Leitner, and he got MJ a private, if you will, RCIA instructor. And this man's name was Frank, and MJ met with Frank weekly, and he took him through the whole RCIA program. And MJ was brought into the church on Pentecost, and it was beautiful. And we're on our way home from that Mass, and MJ announces he wants to be a priest.
It's the most amazing and moving testimony to the power of prayer, and to your faith as confidence in God, your trust in God. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I shall not fear, for you are at my side with your rod and your staff. You give me courage. Well, the Lord has given you too courage, and he's given me the joy of being able to speak to you. And truly, it's the most moving experience. And I look forward, with the help of God, to have you back again another day. It's been a joy, Michael.
It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Hennessy. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and God bless you.
And God bless you too.
I'm looking forward to having you with me next Monday on Faith Matters at 8:30 on Southeast Radio, where my interviewee will be John Connors, the actor, whose story is a most powerful testimony to the mercy of God. I look forward to having you with me then, next Monday, 8:30. Don't miss it. Take care now, and God bless.
This program was produced by the Christian Media Trust, exclusively for Southeast Radio.